currently being recorded, and so I'll give a quick couple of remarks. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'll say thank you for participating in this part of the Welaunee charrette. This is the first part of a two-part charrette. The other part is actually on the website where you signed up for this, and that's an opportunity to look at the entire objective and policies related to the master plan as they are now, and an opportunity to give feedback on each one. You don't actually have to give feedback on every policy, but if there are certain ones that you want to give feedback on, you can kind of go to those. We do have some videos on there to provide a little bit of context. So if you haven't participated in that yet, that is a supplementary part of the charrette to this. Today, we're focusing largely on the map that you see in front of you. And kind of the idea being that the policies that are in the master plan will translate into something that you see on the ground, i.e. on the map, and eventually in real life. So that's kind of the focus today, and Devin and Floyd will facilitate some conversation. Even though we're focusing largely on the map part of this, there's really no topic that's off limits. So anything that you want to talk about. I will note that we do have a larger crowd than usual, and so it may take us a moment to get to you, but if you raise your hand or kind of note that you would like to speak, Devin will put you in a queue to be able to do so. With that, I will actually hand it over to Devin and see if I can provide some tech support for those who are trying to join. So Devin, it's over to you.
Thanks, Artie. Welcome everybody this afternoon. Good to see so many folks on. This, like Artie said, is the largest one yet. So managing this one's going to be a little different than the other ones if you've watched them or if you've been part of those. I'm able to see the majority of folks' screens. Some people don't have their cameras on, but for those that do, if at some point you want to speak or you want to jump in the conversation, if you just raise your hand, kind of wave your hand, I'll notice it. If you don't have your camera on, you can use the raise the hand button. We do have tech support watching that. With this many people, it might take a little longer for them to notice, but we will notice and see that you have a question, and we'll get you in the queue. We've had, I think this is about our 6th or 7th one of these that we've done so far, and a lot of familiar faces are here again, and then we got a lot of new faces as well. Just to kind of start where we've been and what we've talked about, with these other ones, we've talked about wildlife corridors, we've talked about schools and school placement. We've talked about stormwater and regional stormwater facilities, access, housing, you name it. We've had some conversations already on those. Those things are not off the table. They are still on the table if that's anything anyone wants to talk about or anything else you'd like to bring up to talk about. Hopefully you've watched some of the other ones up to this point or been involved, so you kind of got an idea of how we've been handling these. The way we kind of kick it off is I'm just going to throw it over to Floyd and ask if he just get us all familiar with the site. And just so everybody's on the same page from the very beginning, so we all start off knowing exactly where we're at, what we're looking at, and kind of our north, south, east, west. Floyd, can you do that for us?
Sure thing. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. This is the site right here we're talking about on the map here. Let me know if you can't see anything. This black boundary here is the overall parcel boundary around the parcel that we're talking about, which is all of this right here. For context, this is Centerville Road right here. It's Roberts Road up here. This is Mumford and Roberts School up here. Miccosukee Road here. I kind of drew the green hatch outline over here. This is Miccosukee Greenway, Miles Johnson, Thornton. This is I-10 right here. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of where we're at in the world. This red line here, this is 0. This is 5,000 feet right here. It's about a mile, so that way it gives you a sense of scale. Like each one of these is 1,000 feet, so it kind of gives you an idea, like how if you're looking at something about how far apart, how far across it is. Basically, this map came to be is we get folks come in all the time, whether it's they got half acre or 1 acre up to like 2,000 acres, and they just want to know what their options are on their property. It's something we talk through all the time with citizens all over the county. This particular case, the property owner came in and said, "Hey, I'm looking at this. We've got a few things in the works. Kind of want to just start identifying some areas and getting on the map." So what we did, said, "Okay, sure thing. Here's the property. Put a boundary around it. We know that the greenway's here." We basically just said, "Okay, if you got this greenways master plan here, the perimeter greenway right here, if you can reference that in the greenways master plan." said, okay, we know we got some flood zone and wetland issues. So we said, okay, let's identify that, put that on the map. We know there's a general blueprint plan to do a project that's roughly a north-south connection. Final alignment to be determined, but we know somewhere between here and somewhere in this area here, whether it goes here or wherever else, that's still to be determined. So we just showed a north-south roadway. We knew there'd be some type of roadways probably going to the, to the east and west. It kind of makes sense. So we just drew some general connections like that. These are no way final alignment. These are just, we tried to just pick some obvious points that might make sense to have some kind of potential circulation. The purple area here, the tan and the orange, these are the areas that are essentially left and that you could call upland or things like that. That doesn't mean that you could come in and develop 100% of that or impact 100% of that. These are pretty much just the other areas that need to be studied further. And within those areas, there'll be sensitive habitat, other ecosystems, wildlife species, areas need set aside for greenways, things like that. That'll be within that to be additional set aside, things like stormwater, all that kind of stuff need to be determined. So that would further shrink these areas down. But anyway, that's just a real high level overview of kind of how this map came to be. And so here we are here today to get your input.
Thanks, Floyd. And just so now everybody knows where we're at on the site and you can kind of understand where we're at, just a couple things. You are all muted at this point, and we will have someone in the background helping us control muting and unmuting because we do get feedback at times. But if there is a conversation or question you want to jump in on, feel free to unmute yourself and then jump in the conversation. If we want to go questions, we can do it that way. I see one hand already, so I think we just jump into this and go ahead and go. Wendy, unmute yourself and start us off.
Okay, yeah, I just want to ask a question physically about the map. The map
Sure.
included in the text amendment does not have a scale on it, and it describes itself as being conceptual and prepared solely to demonstrate an idea. That's kind of unusual for a map to be adopted in the comp plan. I guess the question would be, one, is this map going to be to scale when it's adopted? And secondly, what do you mean by the term, this map is going to demonstrate an idea, as opposed to a map that will show generally the future land use patterns?
Artie, can you elaborate on that a little bit and just talk about the scale and then what will be adopted?
It's actually not unusual for a map that's at, the comprehensive plan level to not be at scale. We would not do engineering level sets of detail. We would not do a survey at the comp plan level. And so when we look at these dashed lines, that is not exactly to scale where the roadway is going to go. We'd have to do preliminary development environment studies, engineering design, lots of things like that. When it comes to the actual land uses, we're not going to measure out and say that the mixed use area around these roundabouts will have to be at that 90-degree angle at four corners and make a perfect square. This map is complemented by a table in the policies. I can't remember exactly which policy it is off the top of my head. They give specific ranges of what amount of acreage is allowed in each of these land use districts. Clearly you couldn't do something like have mixed use, according to this map, over in the purple or in that residential reserve, that mustard color area, because there's nothing shown in that area. But when it comes to it being like survey level to scale drawing, that's just not what you do in a comprehensive plan.
Artie, can you please answer? Artie, I know we're kind of time limited with so many people. What does it mean when it says conceptual? This is a conceptual map prepared solely to demonstrate an idea. Is that also standard comp plan language?
Yeah, so the idea is that this map is an illustration of the objective and policies you see in the master plan. And so if you were to take the text of the policies and basically like put them on the ground to show what the policies are intended to do, This map illustrates those points. We will throw a scale bar on there, but we'll before this is adopted, because that's something that people have asked for. But the idea isn't that we would use that scale bar and say, oh, okay, the width of the greenway that is going around Welaunee has to be exactly, I don't know, according to this, it might be, 2 feet wide or something. But the map illustrates the purpose that there would be a greenway that goes around the perimeter of the entire property. So that's kind of what is meant by it is conceptual to show that idea is we're trying to show that there would be a greenway around the entire property, but we would have to get into design to know exactly what the width would be, and we'd have to have a survey, and that's just something you get to at the engineering design level, not at the comp plan level.
Thanks, Artie. I saw my second hand come up. Stephen Martin, I had you down here. Steve, welcome back. Just unmute yourself.
I will. And the reason I've raised my hand now is I've got to go. So I'm not going to be able to go into any detail. I did want to, and all I can do now is make mention of it, make reference to comments made at a meeting that I watched a replay of about the Northeast Gateway and Blueprint, and in particular, the Northeast Gateway being classified as a citizen initiative. I would call Blueprint maybe a citizen initiative, but the Northeast Gateway was presented to the Blueprint Citizens Committee by 2 specific, and in particular, 1 private citizen representing a private interest, and that was David Powell on behalf of Powerhouse. So I would call the Northeast Gateway a private initiative, not as I think Dr. Hall had called that a citizen initiative. Blueprint might be classified as a citizen initiative, but I would have called Northeast Gateway a private initiative on behalf of Powerhouse. And I had plenty else to say, but out of respect to Artie, I'm going to keep my composure and say thank you for allowing me to talk. And I would stay on, but I've got a Zoom meeting to go to now. Thank you for recognizing me.
Stephen, we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Okay.
Randy, I think I saw your hand next. You got to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Okay, I thought you were in control of muting. I'm
Oh, hold on.
It's not my, were you trying to finish saying
because
something?
Hold on 1 second, Randy. I got you and Pam. Let me jump to Pam real quick.
Okay,
Pam,
go ahead.
were you
Pam.
responding?
what Steve said. That's sort of. I mean, when the Blueprint Citizens Advisory.
Hey, Pam, you're breaking up. Third word.
City proposals, there were county proposals, and then there were what they called citizen proposals.
I think we've completely lost Pam.
Can you guys still? I know I am. I'm trying not to. This is just not, this software doesn't work very well. So anyways, I'm not sure what Steve is arguing about, but they were all citizens initiatives if they weren't brought by the city or the county. And I brought one. Gateway brought one too. But anyways, no, well, I can't help, can't hear me.
All right, let's jump over. I'm gonna get Randy, and then I have Debbie right after that. So Randy,
Can you hear me now?
go ahead, and then I'll.
All right,
Randy.
thank you very much.
Go to Randy.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. Okay, well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I wanted to talk to the issue as long as we were discussing the Northeast Parkway. And that is that I notice on the map, it does not show the legally recorded conservation easement on the map, which is part of what I want to address. There is currently a legally recorded conservation easement in the name of the Appalachian Land Conservancy with CIRCA, that is Centerville Rural Community Association, Inc., as the conservation tenants. And that was placed on approximately 50 acres of forested buffer land on the north side of the Roberts Montford Pool. I want to just give you a little bit of history of that. In the 1990s, Ed Moore owned a farmhouse in about 150 acres, extending from the Roberts Road, Centerville corner, down to where Welaunee starts, directly south of there. and it was bought by Mark Connor, who at one time was a big developer in this town. And he eventually sold it for a variety of reasons to Leon County School Board, which now owns the land where the two schools sit and the conservation easement and the stormwater holding pond to the south of the school. And the Moore farmhouse and about 6 acres was carved out of that purchase and sold to Bobby and Carrie Kovac. And at that time, none of the land where the school sits was inside the USA boundary, nor was it annexed into the city. And according to the Joint City-County Comprehensive Plan, the annexation and extension of urban services boundaries would have probably been illegal. And at that time, I filed a lawsuit on behalf of CIRCA, the Neighborhood Association, and also on behalf of several individual landowners, Bobby and Carrie Kovac, who lived in the Moore House, Naaman and Aileen Rivers, and Ben and Sharon Johnson, who live on the corner of Santa Anita and Centerville on opposite corners, Roy and Carolyn Knight, who live on Centerville, Ken and Amy Connors, who owned at that time the largest acreage in Dublin Downs, and also on behalf of my ex-husband and myself, we lived on the corner of Bradfordville and Centerville at Firefly Pond Farm. And the school board contacted us and asked us if we would like to try to mediate a resolution of the controversy and settle out of court. And Ken Connors, who is a lawyer, and myself met with the city and with the school board and all of the parties involved. And the school board was very anxious to resolve the issues because they wanted to get the school built, as school overcrowding was becoming an issue, and they needed to move as quickly as possible, and our lawsuit would have obviously slowed down their building schedule. And more importantly, if they had lost, it seemed likely they would have had to sell that property and go back to the drawing board. So the consensus of our coalition was that something was going to get built there eventually. And if the school would provide a sizable buffer between the neighborhood and the school, we could live with it. So when the school board agreed to provide the buffer as a conservation easement in perpetuity, this was a very important concession for the neighbors, and we agreed to withdraw our legal challenge. Now, in the settlement agreement, the city and the school board agreed to create this 50-acre conservation easement that would become a permanent buffer between the school and the neighborhood, and they agreed to have CIRCA remain the custodial tenant and that Appalachian Land Conservancy would hold title to the easement. And the city of Tallahassee joined in the agreement, settlement agreement. So bottom line, you had two government entities, both the city and the school board, making a promise to the citizens. It was a quid pro quo in essence, in exchange for agreeing to allow the schools to be built and withdrawing the lawsuit. They would provide a permanent easement as a buffer. Now, if the government wants to build a road through that conservation easement, that would, in my opinion, be completely illegal, and it would violate the court order and certainly violate the contractual agreement between the parties. And this is kind of, the neighbors I have spoken to feel like this is kind of a bait and switch. And I would say that in my experience, courts frown on this sort of thing. So it would be my position and the position of the neighbors who I've spoken to that under no circumstances should the connector road from Welaunee be allowed to plow through that conservation easement. We feel it would be a serious breach of legal and moral obligations made by the school board. And I also believe it would create a serious safety issue for children who commute to that school right now. So that's all I have to say on that issue, but I will of course have more to say on other issues, but that's the one I wanted to address first.
Thanks, Randy. We appreciate that. And we've been noting these things. We have people taking notes. That way we'll be able to keep that and do some research into that as well.
And I would like to ask, because it does not show on your map what the preferred route seems to be. As far as I can tell from what I've read, it looks like it's going to go through the conservation easement.
Hey, Devin, you want me to touch on that for just a real quick second?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Floyd, but make it brief if you can, just because we have so many on. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
Okay, yeah, this is not a final alignment. I mean, this road can be way over here, maybe over like wherever. This is just like a conceptual and illustrative nature, just like we were talking about earlier. So this is no way a final alignment. So that's a great comment. We got it down.
Thanks, Floyd.
And I believe one of the homeowners is on the line and he may want to say something too.
That's me.
I have Debbie next. Who's on the line that wants to speak?
John Daly?
Yeah,
right, John,
I can speak whenever it's my turn.
All right, I'll come to you next as soon as I get Debbie Lightsey here. Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me join. There was some mix-up when I added an additional date, but I was registered for today. I don't know how the system dropped me out, but thanks for letting me join, Artie. I've got several questions, but I missed the very first map description on the beginning of the call. Can you tell me what this purple area is down here at the bottom?
Floyd,
This area right here?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
Floyd.
it's called mixed use right now.
Okay. That's just designated as mixed use. Where is the city's 400 acres in Welaunee?
Floyd, can you show that? Can you slide your mouse up a little bit?
Yeah, can y'all see it? It's down here. Can y'all see
There
this?
you go. Yes.
This right here, south of I-10. I'll draw a boundary here.
So everything inside the red is the city's property.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'll bow out. I have other questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. John, I'm coming back to you on the phone.
Yeah, we actually bought the Moore house from the Kovacs a couple of years ago. And, it kind of came to my attention after we sort of improved the property there that the road is going to be right sort of behind the house there. And so our concern is that, when we purchased the property, we were aware of the conservation easement, and that was sort of the value of the property for us. And that's kind of why I know it's a little early and you guys are saying the road could come here or there or go whatever, but it's very important to us as exactly where that road's going to be. And we're hoping it's not through that conservation easement.
Thanks, John. We appreciate that. Floyd, do you have those noted and kind of know where the conservation easement is?
Yeah, and with the parcel the gentleman was just talking about, is it this one or is it over here?
It's the one you just pointed at.
This one right here. Okay.
Slide your map back down a little bit, Floyd.
But we're also concerned about the 5-point intersection there. That's going to be dangerous. We need to come up with a little bit better solution than that, I hope.
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to jump in on? Any questions? Kara, I think I see you up there, and then I see Danielle after that, and then Debbie.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you for this opportunity to meet with everyone. I am very interested in our transition to renewable energy, and I've been working with the city through Tally 100 on the clean energy plan that they are actively working on. Now we have a consultant. And so my concern is, what is this development going to do to be able to accommodate the upcoming clean energy plan? What kind of transportation, building envelope issues? Are we going to have some charging stations? Can the buildings be solar ready? Can there be outlets already in the garages that can accept charge, cords for electric cars? With us moving in this direction and us as a city taking the 100% renewable energy pledge, I think it's really important for any new developments, and especially development this size, to take these situations into consideration and do it on the front end now before things get too far along.
Great comments there. I would just let you know that up front right now, there's no developer. It's just a landowner that owns the property at this point. So there's not a developer, and the development isn't scheduled for build out in the near future. So it would be another process that would come along in that. It's good to start thinking about those things now. I want to hand it over to Artie. Artie, do you want to touch on any of those things specifically now so we can talk about where those would come in the process?
Yeah, I'll say that we have started some conversations with the city utilities about kind of basically where the electricity will come from, kind of recognizing that, we do have that goal of being, renewable. Those are some conversations. They're looking at that. Typically at the comp plan level, we wouldn't get quite to the detail of, electrical outlets in the garage, but I think kind of bigger picture, talking about making sure that, we are planning and designing things to allow for more use of renewable energy and clean energy, I think is important. I had a couple of people share with me things like the lead for neighborhood design or lead for neighborhood development guidelines that LEED has put out, and I think we can incorporate a lot of those concepts into this. So this is something that's come up, and we're going to be looking at it. I don't have any answers at the moment, but we'll be doing some research, kind of following these charrettes. So I appreciate the comment.
Thanks, Artie. So I have.
Sorry,
oh,
I just had a quick follow-up. As far as the traffic that's going to be added to the area, is there a thought about running buses out here to cut down on traffic? What are the thoughts for that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say part of the reason for having kind of those kind of planning jargon is a node, but those mixed use areas would be those would be your main transit hubs when transit makes it out here, because we don't know when exactly this will build out. It's hard to plan for transit today, but we do want to make sure that we have those more dense hubs, so when development does happen, that those are supportive of transit. And so, yeah, we're looking into it, but it's one of those things that, with some of the changes in technology, even it may sound kind of sci-fi, but there's a lot of movement toward autonomous circulators, or basically like self-driving small buses. In fact, they're starting to move forward with some of that over in Walton County, even, and Gainesville, looking at those right now. And so I think by the time that this develops out, we'll have to have a more refined plan for that technology as it develops. So yes, it's something we're looking at, but I don't have an exact answer today.
Thanks, Artie. I have Danielle next, Debbie in queue, Pam, and then Randy. Danielle, if you want to unmute, go ahead and.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so I hope y'all can hear me.
You're good. We can hear you.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. I have a number of questions, but I first want to say thank you for hosting these virtual charrettes. I'm on this one and the next one. I'm glad I was able to make it work out. And I was actually the one that sent you the lead for neighborhood design. I'm a LEED accredited professional, so a lot of my knowledge bank comes from 10 years of continuing education to support that. So I really see this as an opportunity for the city to really set the stage for a more progressive style development that is taking advantage of alternative transportation, pedestrian-oriented street design, compact neighborhoods, and energy efficiency, and sort of moving us toward those goals that we've laid out as a community in 2019. So I have a couple of discrete questions that I'll ask, and I'm curious to know why, for example, in the residential area, the location of where low density would be is within proximity to mixed use centers, and it's been my understanding that you want your highest density closest to the mixed use to promote that walkability and connectivity around those mixed use centers and those town centers, and then to decrease density as you move away from those community centers. So can you touch on that a little bit as to why you would have low density right next to the community center, and where the higher density would be, and if it would be more of an integrated neighborhood where you'd have, high, mid, and low density with multiple housing types, for example, the missing middle housing type, and more of a range of options within each of the residential areas.
Artie, I know we've talked about this on the one that we specifically talked a lot about housing. Do you want to recap some of that, and maybe you and Floyd can tag team this?
Yeah.
And if you can tell me which one that is, I can always go back and watch that too, if you can just tell me the date.
I will email you the date because I'll have to confirm which one it is. I think it was July 9th at 3, but I'll confirm that and follow up. I'm making a note to do that now. But I will say that those purple areas are intended to truly be a mix of uses, and so with that it would be the non-residential uses as well as residential uses with a maximum density of 20 units per acre. So that's a little bit on the higher density, at least for our community side. But I think we actually have had a number of conversations about maybe looking at another level of land uses immediately around those that kind of transitions gradually from the 20 units per acre to that 10, have something kind of in between surrounding that, because I think your point is a really good point. And someone just confirmed that it is the July 9th meeting that we talked a lot about the missing middle and the housing. But yeah, I think it's a good point. And one of the things that we're looking about with the housing is kind of including that missing middle. There's mixture. For those who aren't aware, the missing middle, the concept is, we have a lot of single family houses, and then you have apartment complexes, but there's actually a range of housing between those two extremes, where you have duplexes, triplexes, quads, like small scale apartments, like a 10 unit sort of thing, or even a 6 unit sort of thing. So when we say missing middle, that's what we are talking about. I didn't want anyone to feel like we're using jargon that they don't understand. But yes, when we look at not necessarily affordable housing, but housing affordability, providing more housing options does help with that, overall affordability of housing.
Excited.
Okay, thank you for that. A few other points, if I could, I'll try and get through these really quickly. So if the mixed use in the town centers are where the commercial will be, in the larger residential areas, are there still options, for example, of having some more neighborhood supportive types of smaller footprint, if you will, commercial things such as daycare centers or assisted living facilities that are integrated within the neighborhood, the corner deli shop or the corner bakery, or is all that going to be relegated to just where the purple is? And if so, why can't we decentralize that a little bit?
As it's written today, the idea would be you'd have residential and then basically community services. So that would be your churches, schools, parks, playgrounds, things like that. But in terms of having actually like truly integrated residential and non-residential with the corner delis and the bakeries and the coffee shops and stuff like that, that's not how it's written today. But we've actually had a number of conversations internally about that, and so that may be something that is better addressed in the next round. And so I appreciate the comment because it's very much in line with some of the things that we're thinking.
Okay, and then I'll end it with just this one comment. I really do hope that energy efficiency is embraced not just in the transportation system, but in the built environment. And there are a lot of synergies between water efficiency and energy efficiency. So I would hope that low impact design techniques for stormwater management, focusing on infiltration, maybe porous pavement on some of the streets, especially the complete streets, which would help with stormwater management. And improving the energy efficiency of buildings and putting some of that standard language into the actual master plan, so it's an expectation as opposed to a choice. And those are all of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. We appreciate you being here. I have Debbie next, and then I have Pam, and then Randy. So Debbie, I'm coming back over to you.
Okay, I'm still looking at the map here, and all of this darker yellow or gold, what is the density range in that residential?
Floyd, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's I don't know the density number, but this was at the time to talk about it was to be kind of spread out and transition more to the density that's consistent out here, whether it's clustered or or larger lots and ranchettes. Already, were they like 1 to 3 units per acre or something like that?
Currently what's proposed is 6 units per acre.
Okay, 6 units per acre, okay. And
say that again. I wasn't able to hear any of those numbers. Could you say those again more slowly?
Oh,
6 units per acre.
Boy, let Artie do that. Artie, take that one.
Yeah, it's currently proposed to be 6 units per acre, which is what our residential preservation land use category allows.
Okay. Is that going to be 1 to 6?
It's 6 units per 1 acre.
Okay, so it's not from 1 to 6.
It would be a maximum of 6 units on every 1 acre.
But it could be one dwelling unit per 1 acre.
A maximum of 6.
Yeah, it could be less than 6 units per acre. And honestly, if you look at a lot of development that's in residential preservation, by the time you account for protecting trees and putting in infrastructure like roads and things like that, and setting aside water features and dealing with stormwater, you usually don't quite get to that maximum because of all the other things that you have to do on the site.
I would like to make a couple of points. I would like to echo the last comment. Was that Danielle? I didn't see a picture, so I missed her name. I think the model we're currently using now about housing and what most of Tallahassee is built on is segregating housing from any kind of small commercial that would be supportive of that. I mean, that is the failed model. And we've been talking for years about allowing for some support commercial. And when I say neighborhood commercial, I mean actual neighborhood commercial. We've talked about it before, and it ended up being 3 or 4 times what any neighborhood would expect. But I think you do need to be able to have a few shops so everybody doesn't have to get into a car to go everywhere. So I would like to see some of those support services and small commercial establishments integrated here so we don't have the total dependence on the car. And if you don't locate those sites in advance, it's very hard to locate them later. So I would like to strongly echo that comment about allowing now in the language that we don't have strictly residential and then way over here miles away where you have to drive to it, any kind of support services for that. I also would like to see what kind of a plan for a multifamily, and I mean affordable multifamily, and transit, how that's going to be located on this map, because from what we understand, this area will accommodate entire population growth for Tallahassee for like the next 20 years. So if that is in fact true, we've got to allow a better socioeconomic mix, or going to end up with the 2 Tallahassee system again. And to do that, public transit has to be available. So how are we ensuring in our descriptive language, since this is just a concept plan, how are we ensuring that those things are going to be done in this property so that we don't have the same economic segregation that we have always had, where everybody's got to be able to afford a house that's $200,000 minimum, and they have to have the 2 automobiles to get to shopping and get to work, since most families now, both the parents are working. So how is that addressed in the text here, and how do we make sure that we're building a community for the future and not replicating the mistakes we've made in the past? How is affordable housing and public addressed here?
Artie, do you want to?
In the general terms of the text in our commitments.
Do you want to address the comp plan perspective?
I'll do my best. When we look at this area, we're kind of focused in on like a specific part of the community, but it's really hard to do that without also accounting for the community as a whole. So when it comes to things like transit, there's a lot that is in between Welaunee and like the core of our community. Unfortunately, we have essentially what many would consider exclusionary zoning throughout our community. Basically, low density, single family only, don't allow a mixture of uses. That acts as exclusionary zoning, but it's also something that, anytime we look to address in general, there's a lot of pushback because people are very concerned about their neighborhoods. It's, I understand that. I would actually love to see more of a, mixture of uses, like a true neighborhood scale kind of mixture of uses, and not just have, low density, one type of use with other uses spread out. But that's not something that is necessarily only addressed within this one development. That's something that we would need to look community wide. And we started having a lot of those conversations as we were updating the land use elements of the comp plan. And when that comes back around, hopefully those conversations can be continued. Though I will say, anytime we try to address anything with neighborhoods, whether it's uses, whether it's density, there is a lot of pushback from this community on those very topics. And that does make it quite a struggle. But within this, we are trying to plan for specific nodes. I think, we can address the transit language a little bit better than our current draft has. And so that is something that we're looking at. And as Danielle mentioned earlier, kind of reevaluating the way uses are integrated, not just having the mixed use areas, but as you move away from that, actually having neighborhood scale uses. I think an example of what that might look like is another one of the comp plan amendments that we have the cycle, which is the updating the neighborhood boundary land use category. We've been working very closely with the Bond neighborhood and the Griffin Heights neighborhoods through the neighborhood first process. And they've identified a desire to have more of a mixture of uses within those, but keeping it to your corner cafe and things like that are truly neighborhood scale. And so that may be a concept that we're able to replicate here as well.
Well, you see, I think the reason you have so much resistance is this was never built in, and there was no guarantees that you were going to have anything that would fit with the character of the neighborhood, and the scale of the commercial would be something that looked like it was integrated in the community. So I think when starting from scratch, this is in fact the time to do it, because you can give the assurances from the get-go that this is going to be small commercial, cafes, shops that will look like the neighborhood and fit with the neighborhood, that won't be your neighborhood convenience store with 6 gas pumps. But you've got to give those assurances up front. The language has got to detail how this is going to look and how it's going to be integrated, and you do it now and you don't get the resistance because those assurances are given up front. And when you look at the scale of this, I mean, if you're way up here in the northern part of this, say you're up here where these 2 roads are hooked together. Yes, right there. How many miles is it from there down here to this mixed use that's in purple?
That'd probably be about 2 miles.
Well, you see, most people are not going to walk 2 miles to get down there. So, I mean, we've got a huge piece of property here, and I'm just saying that if we're starting from scratch and not going to replicate the problems and omissions, and you said that you don't like exclusionary zoning, so I would say that when you start from scratch like this and can give all the necessary assurances, you won't find the objections you would find otherwise, because the only commercial people are accustomed to seeing here are convenience stores and strip malls, and we're not talking about allowing those dispersed in the community. But if you're going to have different densities of housing through here, I would suggest that probably in this area, so that this area in relationship to the rest of the Northeast, I would suggest that probably you would need a significant transit facility in there, so that when we try to retrofit the rest of the community, you could have some buses starting from the northeast and circulating through this property and coming downtown. So I would think you would need a transit facility here. So we're not talking about how all the community south of this got skipped over when we planned for transit. You can't make that mistake up here again. And I would think you could provide an opportunity here to help the bus system function in all the areas south of here going into town. So in your answer, Artie, you cited 2 or 3 of the big problems we've got now, and you know what they are, and we have a chance to avoid them now in this master plan.
Thanks, Debbie. We appreciate the comments there. I do want to stop for a minute and just say that we are at 3:55 and this was scheduled until 4. We did not start until about 3:15. So if everyone's okay with going to 4:15, I want to make sure we get the full hour of it. So if I can get some nods, if everyone's okay with that. Okay. And then I want to go ahead and make sure I got at least 3 speakers lined up. I got Pam, Randy, and Wendy that are all in queue right now. So I want to go ahead and jump over to Pam and let her kind of start it off and see if we can get through these at least the 3 speakers and anyone else that has a comment.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that in the development agreement, it says that the extension of the COT utilities includes gas. If we're looking forward to the future of being carbon neutral, extending gas lines is a bad idea. There's nothing, gas might be better than oil, than coal, but it's not better than renewables. So I think that there really ought to be a disallowance of any gas to be extended up into this area, because once you build that infrastructure in, it's there for 50 years. And I hear that in theory, Tallahassee plans by 2050, I think it's going to be net neutral. So I really think gas is one utility that should not be extended out here. The other thing is about transit. Thank you, Debbie. I think you're absolutely right. There needs to be a place designated as a central transit area. So when a PUD comes along, it'll do it. I do think in terms of the timing of the PUDs, while there's this mantra that this isn't going to be built for 20 years, I think that's unlikely. There's a $47 million road being built here. It's going to be done by 2025. I would say that, and that's going to include the Shamrock extension. It's not the ones that will go further to the east in Miccosukee. I would say that this corridor, this western corridor, between where COT's land is south of I-10 and north to the schools, I would expect PUDs to start showing up there easily within 5 years. I know that the toe needs to still be developed. The city needs to sell their land. And the heel is supposed to be developed, but there's no public monies building a road in the heel. So I don't expect the heel to be developed until somebody manages to put a road in. And that's going to be very expensive for individual developers, just like the road is too expensive here. So I suspect that won't move until there's public money. So I think we should be seriously thinking about the next 5 to 10 years, the development is going to be at least on the western side here. And one last point about transit. We're constantly building things that are transit ready, but the real problem is, and I think we only have county commissioners on, we need to have city commissioners here to understand that the transit system that we have is like driving on a clay road. No one's going to use it until it works. And there's nothing to connect to until it works in town, inside of Capitol Circle and I-10. Well, the county commissioners who are here, you're on CRIPTA. You're on Blueprint. We really need to start putting money into transit and not just building new roads and widening roads, because, transit right now, there's no place to connect to. It doesn't work. It only works for people who are too poor to own cars, which means it does not work.
Thanks, Pam. We appreciate the comments. I'm going to move over to Randy and get Randy's comments.
Thank you very much. I'd like to comment on something, elaborate on something that Debbie said, and also Pam's point about the gas extension. The Southwood, when it was built, was supposed to have a town center that was going to be walkable and bikeable. And then they did a bait and switch, and they ended up building a lot of high density apartments there instead. So I hope if there is a town center, that it is put into the master plan with some kind of teeth, that they can't do a bait and switch like they did in Southwood. And I would suggest that to make it actually walkable and bikeable, that it would make sense to make the Welaunee development more compact and to keep the northernmost portions of Welaunee an open space in order to create that compactness of development and keep the development closer to downtown. And also it would help as maintaining the rural character of the areas outside the USA boundary, which border Welaunee and which would be better served by a forested buffer on the northmost portion of the property. So studies show that when you have compact subdivisions, they generate 57% fewer vehicle miles than conventional subdivisions. So that will also help with our carbon neutrality. Concerning the gas extension of gas lines, well, obviously now that the city has and the county have extended the USA line, they are now legally obligated to bring urban services to Welaunee. And but the question remains, what urban services are they required to bring there? And I don't think there's any legal obligation to bring gas lines. They have a legal obligation to bring electricity and sewer, but I don't think there's any legal obligation to extend natural gas lines. And if we're going to reach our 2050 carbon neutrality goal, we're going to have to convert every single household in Tallahassee from natural gas to green electric energy. And the city has made this commitment now, so they got to think futuristically, not just, today or tomorrow. And why would they knowingly extend natural gas pipelines to Welaunee, knowing that in a decade maybe, they're going to have to dismantle all those connections and retrofit all the appliances in those homes. So it just doesn't make sense as an expenditure of public funds and in terms of long-term environmental planning. I picked out some industry figures of how much it costs to extend natural gas lines. And we're talking, the Welaunee Arch is 13 miles from downtown to its highest point. I don't know where the nearest available hookup is, but that's going to be at least 4 miles of extending natural gas pipeline. And the average cost of that is about 7.65, no more than that. Excuse me, I had the figures here. So about $8 million a mile. So yeah, that's a lot of money, and you don't need natural gas. Every appliance in your home can run on electricity if you require those kinds of appliances in each home. So instead of retrofitting all these appliances, it would make sense to just not allow the hookups to begin with. And so that would be my request. And also, there was a big article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about how the oil and gas industry are logging huge numbers of bankruptcies. So there's questions even about future supplies and reliability. In a related issue, I would like to also see all the utilities underground. I'm well aware that it costs a lot more to install it initially, but over time, if you factor in the cost of repairs and all the other externalities, it itself, not to mention the aesthetic gains and the gains in terms of not having to do maintenance after hurricanes and bad weather events. So that's what I would like to say on that. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Randy. We appreciate the comments. I want to come to Wendy and have Wendy's comment, but after Wendy, I want to take a minute to ask a few of the folks that haven't spoke yet, just to see if they have anything. So with that, I want to give them a chance, and then if anyone else has a comment, I'll come back to them. But I want to go to Wendy now.
Devin, why don't you reverse that? Since I've already had a chance to speak, I'll be happy to wait if there's someone who wants to say something.
Thanks, Wendy. Let me see if there's anyone. Mike Breslin, I see you're here. Mike, do you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say there's a lot of smart women, and I'm enjoying listening to them.
Thanks, Mike.
Well,
that's all I have to say.
All right, thanks, Mike. I have another mic on right now, Mike Breslin. Mike, mute yourself. I saw you trying to talk too. There you go.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I would just like to say that I support Wendy and Debbie and Pam and their points on particularly integrating the commercial or small scale commercial with residential. and certainly the going towards energy efficiency.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And then there was one more person I think that I wanted to ask. I have. Hold on one second. Sorry. I have a Miss. I think Miss Colson. I can't see the full name. There's a Colson.
Yes, it's Robin.
Do you have anything you want to add to the conversation?
The only thing that I would like to just reinforce is the conversation about the mix of homes that are developed and really working to keep an eye on affordable housing as part of the mix, which I think is sadly lacking in all parts of other county, but certainly in this sector.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Going to go back to John Bailey real quick. John, you were new to the conversation today. Is there anything else you want to add before we get the last few comments?
No, it's probably a little early. You know, this is all preliminary. The roads are just kind of, as you guys said, it could go here or there. We just kind of want to get in there and, you know, do the legality parts of like the conservation, talk about that. That's just really the main thing.
Appreciate it, John. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for letting me join.
All right, Wendy, I'm coming back to you.
Okay, I was hoping that Artie could speak for a minute or two about what the vision is for what this community will look like as it approaches build out. Early on, Artie explained that this map, if you kind of took all the language, this would be a conceptual picture of what that would look like. And the reason I'm asking is because you have sort of indications that it should be a multimodal community, that it should be walkable, it should provide a mix of housing types. And there are some specific policies in the plan about how things should be built and how they should look. But from a land use perspective, I don't really see how we achieve that in terms of the densities, intensities, and mixes of uses that would presumably give us that. So it would be helpful to me if, Artie, if you could just kind of talk for a few minutes about what you see this community looking like as it approaches build out based on what we've got in the proposed amendment.
Yeah, I can do that. And I'll caveat it with, you know, based on these conversations that we've had over this charrette and others, that vision may change some. I think it'll actually change for the better. So I appreciate everyone's feedback and participation through this process. And, you know, if we rewind several years ago, I think around 2015, 2016, when this process, you know, started, the idea was that you would have kind of more of what like a mirror of what's on the other side of everything. So, you know, with Killarn being right next to this, that brown areas on the western part of this would kind of be like Killarn, but then you would have a little bit of more of like a town center kind of feel at where those intersections are. And then as you head east, it would start looking more and more like what's on the other side of Roberts and Crump. Through conversations that we had when we were doing the land use element update, I think some of those started changing a little bit and were modified. And then when we got to the point where we were taking this to the commission to have them send it to the state for review, the vision had changed a bit. So we were looking at the western portion of this being a little bit higher density, not, you know, dramatically different than what you see on the other side of Centerville, but overall higher. So instead of it kind of being like residential preservation, which is what Killarn is, it would be, you know, a little bit higher density, more closer to like 10 units versus 6 units per acre. And then as you started heading east, it would actually look more like, I don't want to say Killarn because the idea was you would have more conservation subdivisions. And so, you know, you might have more space set aside, but then all the houses would be clustered a little bit closer together. When you average that out over the entire area, it might be 6 units per acre, but the idea wasn't that it would be a blanket of 6 units per acre. Just kind of the way we look at land use, given the way statute is set up. and I'm not saying this to Wendy because I know she knows this. This is for like anyone watching later or anyone else on the call. We identify a land use category, and then you set the minimums and maximums for intensities and densities for that entire land use category. But I think we envision that it'd be more conservation subdivisions, so kind of clustered, and then more open space kind of woven between them. The purple areas, the big one at the bottom, that's projected to be in the future an interchange with I-10. So Welaunee and I-10 would be another interchange. Didn't necessarily want it to be exactly like any other interchange where you like get off and there's a gas station and stuff, but it would have some of those uses just hopefully designed a little bit better. And then you would kind of morph into more of an employment center kind of place. So there would be a place for jobs, and then also integrating residential. And this would be where you would have your apartments and things like that, because that's the 20 units per acre. And then when you start looking at the other two intersections, I think probably the best analogy, though it wouldn't have to be exactly the same, but would be like Bannerman Crossing. So you have Bannerman and I'm drawing a blank on the north-south road there. They come together at a roundabout, but then you have kind of more of an internal compact walkable town center. More like Bannerman Crossing and less like Southwoods Town Center, because it would be at an interchange, or not interchange, an intersection of the roads instead of kind of internal to the development. And actually, Floyd has a kind of a scale version of what the interchange or the roundabout there at Bannerman Crossing looks like with the uses around it. So the idea would be a town center, and then I know that one of the things we're going to do is look at how do we do a better job of doing internal capture, basically meaning that, instead of people driving out of Welaunee to meet their needs, they kind of stay within the development. Kind of that would be part of the strategy, but we're also hoping to some degree repair some of the sprawl that's out there now by allowing some of the residential development surrounding this to also have things that they need to meet their daily lives a little bit closer to them. And, those would be here. Though I think through these conversations, the idea that particularly within the western portion, maybe doing a more transitioning of densities away from the multi-use center or the multi-use nodes. We did look at potentially maybe having a even smaller scale, not necessarily the scale of Bannerman Crossing, but more of a little neighborhood center there at the intersection of the roads that's more on the eastern side that doesn't have any mixed use right now. So maybe it's a little bit smaller because it would be the conservation subdivisions, and you wouldn't necessarily want a Bannerman Crossing type development there, surrounded by the conservation lands and then the conservation subdivisions. But something so they wouldn't have to go the 2 miles in over to one of the other ones. We did envision, the perimeter trail being an extension of the Miccosukee Greenway, and then the public spaces that are in the open space that's kind of in there. A lot of it is, wetland, flood zone, being accessible to the public. And then applying the complete streets principle, having these roadways also have something like a shared use path or a trail along the side, so that you would have a connection from within the development to the trail around it, and vice versa. So if you're, out on the Miccosukee Greenway and you're going around here and you want to come in and, take a break and get something to drink, then, you'd have those trails that connect into the development as well. And that's part of that complete streets policy. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Artie.
You're muted, Wendy. So.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Debbie, you're muted, Debbie. You just need to unmute yourself. Debbie, unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. For all practical purposes, this whole darker yellow section up here, which is the lowest density residential, that's going to be your higher end properties. And if you don't do something in this master plan to effectively say that you're going to integrate some different densities of housing up there, you're going to exclude everybody that is median income and below in this darker yellow area. I mean, that's just the practical result of that. Large lot means more expensive property, more expensive homes. And so if we're going to have any kind of move away towards economic segregation in this community, things going to have to be done in this huge section up here, so you don't have many estates and ranchettes and only the higher income people living in what looks to be about half of this property. So basically, if you leave it like this, it's a set aside for the quite well-to-do. And I don't think that that's going to be your intention, but we know how the world works. And that's what is going to happen here. So if you're going to have any kind of mix of housing types and costs and mixed socioeconomic groups here, to say it from the get-go and not have all this in the 1 to 10, possibly 1 unit per acre or 1 unit per 3 acres, because otherwise it will not happen. You just got to designate that from the start, I think, or it's just another pipe dream.
Thanks, Debbie. We are at 4:15, actually 4:16. I see 3 hands really quickly. Can everybody make it brief and close it up? I got Pam, Mike, and Kara. I'll start with Pam.
Debbie, we've talked about this at other ones, and I have suggested that there be no such place as single family detached only zoning, and that be a requirement that all places where there's building, there's some diversity of housing types, and that would include in any conservation subdivisions that might end up on this eastern side. Also, I don't know, Floyd, if you can really quickly draw in the Keep It Rural's greenways proposal, our big, particularly the large, our forest, right? So we've been talking about taking that whole area up that and turning that into a park. So that doesn't get built at all. And then there's some other components, but that would mean that the conservation subdivisions, we might not need to have as many of them, and there could be more dense housing, which would allow this greater diversity of housing types. But I agree with you, Debbie, we need to have it in the master plan that there be minimums and that the diversity of housing types they're required, not that they're a possibility, and that be everywhere throughout the property. So there's not a patch where, low income people live in a patch where wealthy people live. Okay.
If this is divided up into PUDs and that language in binding, you're going to get an average density across the property, which is not going to allow for mixed density and mixed income development. So you're relying on the PUDs, and that won't work unless you designate some of this now.
Well, that's what I was saying, that in the master plan, the requirement for diversity of housing type will be there, and minimums. I mean, that's what we're aiming for. I agree with you, Debbie. That's one of the things that I've been working on. Okay.
Okay. And going to Mike real quick. Go ahead, Mike. Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. I was just trying to find my button there. Yeah, the thing that I get nervous about when we talk about more and more high density is what we've seen so far, which is treeless neighborhoods that you'd have to walk in unbearable heat to get to a shady spot. So that's my biggest concern, that there's not enough trees in what we've seen so far. And I think there's got to be a heightened awareness about tree preservation within these dense areas that you're talking about. And I'm not sure if that could happen because the houses I've seen so far are so close together, there's really no room for trees. So that's my biggest concern as someone who lives out in this area and really loves the trees that we have in the shade. I saw a woman trying to walk her dog the other day. It's the only person I saw outside when I drove through the canopy, and she looked like she was about to drop dead. So I think that's something to be mindful of.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Kara, I see you as well.
Yes, thanks. I'll echo what Mike said. That was basically my point. Is I've lived over here near Roberts Elementary, and my family's lived here for over 20 years. And what's happened down in Canopy literally made us cry, with it being basically stripped and built so heavily that, it's incredible amount of density, no trees. So, and also the crazy thing is when all of this land is being cleared, and a lot of trees have come out of this section of land already, because we have a road right across from ours and we see the trucks coming out, and we have had all kinds of animals in our neighborhood that we don't normally have. We're at the top end of Killarn. So we've had all kinds of animals that are being displaced. So I guess my question is, are there wildlife corridors already established? I do see that there's a lot of wetland areas on the property, but I am really concerned that as we continue to build out, we continue to, push these animals further and further out, and a lot of them are just not making it. So and the trees as well, they're really important for us to not only stay cool, but also for habitat.
Thanks, Karen. That's been echoed through multiple of the meetings, so it's good to hear that coming up again. I'm gonna have time for two more. I got, it looks like Britt had something he had, and Gary Hunter, and I'm gonna have to end on those two and close it out. So, go ahead, Britt.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm new back coming home to Tallahassee after being in South Florida for 20 years. With Kimley Horn, private sector land development has been what I do. It's good to hear all the comments, and there's a lot of great points being made, I think, as far as how to be smart about this development. This is a huge opportunity for the city. I'm going to just speak on behalf of myself because I'm going to be a resident right up the street on the north side of Roberts. And also from the civil engineering and development standpoint, that's what I do for a living. But the one thing that I would just caution is there's a lot of good points as far as making restrictions on what can and can't happen. But we just got to be real careful as far as making prohibitions. We want to be smart, I think, about developing this area in such a way that we're all happy, but it's got to make economic sense. And we have to be careful about limiting what's in the toolbox. And I'll just say that from the developer's standpoint is being able to come in and find stuff that can work and we can make deals on, but is not so hampered on prohibitions that we can't come up with a creative solution to make something work. And I don't know what the answer to that is. It's just throwing it out there to be cautious about strict prohibitions on what can and can't be or what is required, because that then may limit the potential for a deal down the road for something that ultimately we can find a way to make something work and make everybody happy. It's just making sure we have all those tools available to us when that opportunity presents itself.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate that. And last one, Gary Hunter. I saw you jump in there, and I think you're still there. You're unmuted, Gary, but we can't hear you. No sounds coming from you, Gary. Artie, you hear anything from Gary on your end?
No, if he wants to type it into the chat, we can kind of relay that information.
Let me add something relevant to the two comments I heard about the trees. In an earlier conversation, there was discussion about having an urban forest master plan for this property. I drove through Canopy, and I suggested all the staff drive through Canopy. Each of the individual houses, it appears to be nicely done. However, everything was clear cut. There is one token huge live oak left that only reminds us of what we have lost as a community. So when I talk about higher densities and mixed incomes, I'm not saying wipe out all the trees, because canopy is the result when you won't save a lot to keep a tree there and you're just maximizing profit above all else. I think there has to be an urban forest plan here, and we do not want to replicate the treeless, parched landscape that has been created, although the houses are very attractive in Canopy and lots of them are selling. But we don't want to make that mistake again either.
Artie, were you able to get Gary's comment?
No, I have not seen.
Robert, you're on, Robert. Do you have any comments? Are you, Gary, in communication?
Hey, Devin, this is Robert. Volpe. Thank you. We must be having a little technical difficulty. I've been listening to the comments made today as well as the comments that were made previously.
Robert, will you just let them know that you guys are representatives or who you represent?
Yes. Myself and Gary Hunter are the attorneys for the landowner at the Welaunee Arch. Been listening to the comments and making note of those. I think, as we mentioned earlier, that there have been several good comments about transportation, considering other land uses, considering integration of land uses, and I appreciate the staff. We appreciate the staff's effort in bringing citizens, bringing the community together to have these discussions. So as Artie and your team work on updates to the policies and map, we're interested to see how you can integrate some of these concerns and comments. But overall, I think the discussion has been helpful. I don't necessarily have any additions to add at this point, but I do appreciate the standpoints, and I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate everyone being here, especially Commissioner Deloge, Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Minor. Commissioner Meyer, you've been here for the long haul with us. We got one more to go. Hopefully we'll see you on that last one as well. Good seeing all the familiar faces and all the new faces. Like Artie said in the very beginning of this, he does have another portion of this charrette that is a survey portion up on the website where you signed up for this one. If you haven't filled that out, please fill it out. And if you know anyone else that we can get to fill it out, please send it along and have them fill it out as well. If there's questions we didn't get to talk about or comments today, sign up for our last charrette, which I believe is next Wednesday, right, Artie? Or no, is it Wednesday night?
I've double checked. I think it is.
I think we did it so it wouldn't be on a city commission meeting. So I'm pretty sure it's next Wednesday night, but sign up for that last one we have. And if there's any other questions or comments that come up, feel free to use that second part on the website. And we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.